Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Liberty Baptist Church of Chicago for our Black History Month series that is continuing. We come this far by faith. I want to thank our panel on last week. We want to thank Deacon Ballard, his wife, Elaine Ballard. Thank you, Azalee Sutton, and thank you, blood brother Leo Clark. You got us started last week on what life was like in the South, and today we have a very special guest. We have someone who is extremely dear to me. I've been pastoring now in my 21st year, and this young lady has been with me my entire time. She's a great inspiration to me, a second mother to me, and when you all hear me preach, particularly from a social justice or political standpoint, I thank God for her, because she has framed my mind and has challenged me to think through things that I might have not have done otherwise. And so we're excited today to have with us Sister Dorthy Wright Tilman. You know, they have this thing called Chicago's very own. This is one of Liberty's very own. And so we are excited to have Sister Dorthy Wright Tilman with us today. Those of you that may not know her like I know her or we know her, she was a civil rights activist, worked close with Dr. King. She knows the story about the South, the growing of the movement in Alabama. She's going to share some of that stuff with us today. She worked many years as an alderman in the 3rd Ward in Chicago, which is our ward. She was instrumental in the election of Harold Washington. Through her children now that she continues to support. Down the street from us is the Harold Washington Cultural Center. And if you watched the Showtime, I believe, special on Barack Obama, she was right there during that time too. And so we just thank her for being who she is to our people. We thank her for taking time out of her schedule tonight. And so what we're going to give you a glimpse in tonight is something very simple. When we talked on the phone, I mentioned this to her. What you're about to experience tonight is our regular other week phone call. This is usually the content of how we talk every other week or weekly by phone. So I'm excited that she's here today so we can share a little bit of those conversations with you. And so before we get started, let us now go to God in prayer, and then we'll formally at the table introduce you again to Sister Tilman. God, we thank you for tonight. We thank you, God, for providing space for us to come together and talk about not only the past, but the new agenda for our people as we reflect on the past. We thank you, God, for we have truly come this far by faith. Come in the midst of us now, God. Enrich our hearts and our minds and increase our perspective. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. We're about to get going tonight. Let me say hi to a few people, and then we will then move on. Hello, Juanita Talbot, Regina Gibson. Jamil Tilman is in the house. As always, she's not just here when Mama is in the house. Elva Williams is in the house. Liz in the house. It is good to see all of you all. Facebook, I see you. I know you all been talking about chiming in all day. And I see Lady Michelle Jackson is in the house. So it's good to see you. Sister Tilman said, praise God. All right. So let us get started now with our discussion. And so, Sister Tilman, again, we're just so happy to have you here. And, you know, this is something that we do at least once a year on your radio show. Oh, and that's another thing, guys. Every Saturday morning from 6 to 8, WVON, 1690 AM, Talk of Chicago. There's coffee, tea, and conversation with Dorthy Wright Tilman.
You can also get it on iHeart.
And you can get it on iHeart Radio as well. So, Sister Tilman, they want to hear from you. They hear from me all the time. And so, like you usually do for me on your radio show, I'm going to kind of turn it over to you to kind of go through, outline of sort of what we discussed, and then I'll chime in and have questions from there.
Well, first of all, I was telling Deacon Rose that you was peeping in my closet. Maybe I was
Great
peeping in
minds
yours.
think alike. Great minds think alike. We ain't playing this, y'all. We ain't playing this, but it does look good. We didn't plan it, but it does look good. You got black and gold hat.
I tell you,
Oh,
yeah.
right on,
Why
right on,
not?
right on.
Why not? But let me just say, it's an honor to be here with my pastor, because I look at you as my pastor, my spiritual leader. Even though you're my friend, you are my spiritual leader. And I don't just follow anybody. And just anybody can't be my spiritual leader. And I do know that you're very spiritual, and God work with you, and you have that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spirit. Not just because you graduated from Morehouse, but you do have it. And thank you for inviting me.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you.
Okay.
Glad to have you. So walk us through a little bit. I know you saw the panel last week. A little bit about what your experience was from the South, how the movement sort of grew out of that, addressed that necessity.
Well, I heard the program last week. It was really great to hear from seniors my age. Elaine and all of us, we're the same age, but some other seniors. Coming from the South, let me just say that I understood what they were saying. I understand their pain. I understood even some of the things they're reluctant to talk about. You know, one of the things I found that in looking, it's still painful for black people to talk about the experience, even though there was pain for them to talk about enslavement. And I think it's a little painful for some to talk about what we did during the Jim Crow era and how we was treated. But let me start by my growing up in the South and how I became part of the movement. And I would like to also touch on Pastor the important role that the church played.
Absolutely, great.
And also I would like to talk about the organizations, because it's very painful to see young people out here being led. That's why I love your sermon Sunday. You know, lesson plan. Yeah, lesson plan. Who you give your pen to or your laptop to. Yeah. Because I brought you a book tonight, which is a very good book I want you to look at. But even that, in that lesson plan, they captured, but they didn't have all of it. And if our children don't have the right information, they just don't know what to do, so they'll be led. They'll follow anybody's lesson plan. Let me just say that. Right. But I happened to grow up in a community that I had a lot of seniors and people who gave us a lesson plan. I knew Mrs. Parks. There was Miss Johnny Carr. That was at MIA. There was Miss Robinson. Was my grandmother, my mother, just a lot of people. I grew up with a lot of people who were strong. I was talking to my pastor that was my pastor when I was a little girl, Reverend Fields, from the Bell Street Baptist Church. I called him tonight, and I told him I was going to be doing a presentation. I didn't tell him where. I just told him because he needed to rest. He was a little under the weather. Right. And I was telling him about how blessed we were as children to be in churches, not just the Bell Street Church, but Hope Street Baptist Church and Mount Zion, all the different churches where the ministers was teaching us courage and to be strong and helping us to stand up. And one of the things he said to me, he said, Miss Sister Tilman, he was about to call me that little girl, Dorthy, right? He said, right. He said, you're carrying on, but in order to do those things, you have to have courage. Yeah. And it takes courage for people to fight and to fight right. Right. And so we talked about courage a lot today. But so I grew up with a lot of people who had that courage. Even my father, you know, during the Montgomery bus boycott, he picked up people in his cars and all of that. But let me go back to my childhood. I first met Dr. King when I was 9 at the Hope Street Baptist Church. Wow. Now, why were we at the Hope Street Baptist Church? Because of Mrs. Parks had refused to give her seat to a white man. Some folks said she refused to get about the front seat. She sat in the front of the bus, and I have to tell the children that's not true. Children think that. She was in the colored section. And it's just so when you're in the colored section, you know, a nigga just don't sit when a white man is standing. You know, it was against the segregation law. So she got put in jail because of the segregation law. So that was before the MIA was created or organized.
So now, because I think that's very important. So she was sitting in, because we got some kids watching it. She was sitting in the Negro section.
The colored.
I'm sorry. See,
And
I'm born in 1972, right? So I'm Negro.
No,
right?
it was the color section. And,
Okay.
And you, whether you could read or not, it was a nasty red that I never wear. They had a little red that it's back behind those doors.
Okay. And so did the white person want to sit in the colored section and ask her to get up?
You have to get up.
Okay.
You had to get up if the bus got full. You have to just give your seat.
And that's what happened.
So, and it so happened that the person that was sitting across from her were white, who had already gotten somebody's seat, I guess.
Okay.
And she refused to give her seat. So that's what happened.
Okay.
And I always tell people, I understood why Mrs. Park gave her seat. Because when I was a little girl, we would take the Day Street bus in Montgomery. And I would always try to get in the front. You know, you put your money in and go back to the back. And my grandmother would always snatch it. You can't do that. And I said, why? And I see the little white girls up there waving, like, and I was clean. Mm-hmm. And those people from the South know that our parents pressed our hair so hard with them straightening combs that our scalp get burning when the sun hit it, and the ribbon coming down and the grease coming down. Right. And I knew I was cleaner than them little white girls, and my patent leather shoes were shine with the biscuit. So I knew I was fine, but I could not, and my grandmother would have made me those skirts on her single sewing machine, my little pleated skirts. Yeah. So I was pretty. But I couldn't go to the front of the bus. So I would always want to go. So I remember telling my grandma one day, I'm going to do something about this one day. She said, you probably will. But I was little.
Right.
So when Mrs. Park refused to give her seat, a lot of us understood. And we made up songs like Boycott the Bus, Today Respect Us, things like that. Yeah. But in the meantime, the ministers took a leading role. And my minister, Reverend Fields, was one of those ones who took a leading role. Who, when they organized the MIA, and it was because you had a lot of denomination and a lot of other things going on, and became the Montgomery Improvement Association to improve Montgomery. It had nothing to do with titles or where your church AME, because you had a lot of National Baptist people were there, and you had a lot of Baptists and a few AME and a few other ones and organizations. Yeah. So that's why they came up with the MIA. But a person that's really forgotten is E.D. Nixon.
My dad would talk about E.D.
Nixon
all the time.
Had it not been for E.D. Nixon, we probably would not have had a successful boycott. He would support him. He was one of those with A. Philip Randolph.
Okay.
Yeah, he was one of those, see. So when Mrs. Park was arrested, I think her mother or somebody, she called her mother called, when they called Mr. Nixon, I have to say Mr., we had to say Mr. and Mrs. Yeah. Mr. E.D. Nixon, then he was trying to get an attorney to go down and say, Gray was my attorney when I was in jail in Montgomery, but he tried to get them to go, and they wasn't in town, say Gray, so he ended up getting this white attorney, I think his name, I don't remember his name, I have to look it up, they can look it up. And they went down, and they bailed Mrs. Parks out. Wow. And in the meantime, Mrs. Robinson at Alabama State. Okay. I mean, they organized with a little nothing, but because their heart was in the right place and the love was in the right place. So Mrs. Robinson, with her mimeograph machine, don't forget, we didn't have no faxes in here. Okay. So, and they had, I wrote down the name of her organization. Her organization was joined, it was the Women Action Council.
Okay, Women's Action.
Oh, yeah, and see, one thing about, that's what you hear me say on my radio show sometimes, that I blame black women in our churches for the state we're in, because women we always had different organizations to keep that community together. Right. You know, he who you to rock the trailer, you rule the world. Yeah, and they always taught us, when it was in school, told us who we were, in Sunday school, in the community, in the social centers. The women were there to help us.
When you talk about the organizations, you talk about MIA and how all the different denominations came together. What do you think was the unifying factor? Because that seems to be our problem today. What inspired you all so much to say, let's get this together, no big eyes?
Well, I would like to think that the people who came, like you had 18 people that day, okay, that mobilized, that came up with the organization. The organization was not in place. Okay. And I went back to find out that I remember the purpose of their organization. The MIA mission was, they was founded to provide organizational leadership for the Montgomery bus boycott. Nothing else, but to provide organizational leadership.
Okay. And so they didn't come to the table wanting to be the leader.
No.
They were looking to find organizational leadership.
So that they can support the boycott.
Got it.
And Mrs. Robinson had already put her little flyers out, and then they was deciding what they were going to do. Ralph Abernathy, my pastor was the secretary, but they came to, he was the first secretary for about almost a half a year.
Okay.
Conflict came out. But anyway, and when they selected Dr. King, remember Dr. King hadn't been there very long.
Right, yeah.
And most of the other pastors, he's kind of like you, Pastor. But most of the other pastors had been there for a little while around.
Okay.
Because he took Vernon John's place.
Right.
Vernon John was a
That's
very...
Avenue, right.
Yeah, which is a whole nother story. We'll have to talk about Vernon John one day.
Yeah.
How great this man was economically and all the other stuff he thought about. So as Reverend Fields told me today, destiny have you to be where you got to be. When you're called, the question is, do you have the courage to meet that destiny? I talked to him about 2 hours today. And
they're going to hear that preach one Sunday. Courage to meet the destiny.
Yeah, he said,
I'm already working on it.
Yeah, you got to have courage.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, you always had courage. Even when you were a little girl, all y'all down there had courage off McGowan Street, you know. And so we talked about that. But so they put the flyers together. And the thing about it is that there was almost a division. And I don't remember the minister's name. I'm going to go look at his boycott book or look it up. I got a book on boycott that he wrote too. But some of the ministers went to meet with the mayor. He invited them down.
Okay.
They had selected their leaders and stuff. And when the ministers left, the mayor announced that the minister said the boycott was off. So then almost got to be confusion in the room.
Right.
But because of the love for black people and being truthful and being with God, being led by God, it didn't work. Because that was not what they did. They said they was called out to do insurance.
Okay.
They called out for something else. See, confusion. He who write the, you know, that's your sermon from. Because Dr. King at that point wanted to step down. And he said, no, they told him, no, you can't step down. And then they got to the truth in the bottom of it. But right then, that whole movement might have gotten, if they was on an ego thing or didn't some lead them other than God, that was the devil talking to them, they would have broke up. So that's why the MIA got started. And and as the boycott went on, now that structure you was talking about. See how you told me to talk about structure. You can't do anything without structure. I don't believe that black folks should let white folks lead them. That don't mean you can't work with them.
Absolutely.
They have to come. We have to put together our agenda. No other person can lead us, especially the descendants of enslaved blacks in America.
Right.
We have to lay out our agenda, do what we have to do, and then other people are welcome, because nonviolence, so you have to, we don't reject anybody.
Right.
Because some people are real and some folks coming to infiltrate.
Right.
But you have real people too. We had a lot of real people. So because they had that whole godly thing and that whole thing about what we were going to do at the MIA, they were able to carry on. But remember, on January 10th, people can look that up, the students, about 4 churches got bombed. This is after they had said that the boycott was going to end, all that. That was January after the boycott ended, okay? And they bombed churches. They was pulling men and women off the buses. They was beating up people. They bombed the parsonage of Reverend Abernathy's. They put a bomb on Dr. King's porch. This little stuff, I mean, that stuff was real deep. You had to have courage. This stuff these folks doing, reading, as you said, reading it, what they put, go to them, people give them to read. We in trouble because leadership are not being leaders. I said they like Esau. Yeah. They selling their birthright for soup, and their birthright come from our fight from the time that we came here as enslaved people. If you look at our history, our birthright, we've always fought and moved up. Yeah. And we never talked down, Pastor.
Right. And as we oftentimes talk about that. What bothers me is when Dr. King now has become a soundbite.
Yeah.
Every little black preacher that can get on NBC, ABC, or CBS says, and Dr. King said, and it's kind of what I talked about Sunday. We want to sound like Dr. King and get in front of the cameras, but we don't want to die.
No.
And that courage and that.
Well, I would submit to you that's why they blow his brains out.
Yeah.
So they can say, I ain't get my brains blown out like Dr. King. That was a psychological damage. Yeah.
That's right.
That's why they shot him in the head. That's why Ray didn't do it, somebody else did it.
Right.
Shot him in his head. Mm-hmm. So, no, people don't really, they say they want to, but they play games. And they go sell out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't remember any ministers in my leadership growing up following people that sold out. Mm-hmm. You could trust your leader to go behind that door and go fight for you, and they're going to do what the group have decided they're going to do. Mm-hmm. And that's where that structure come in at, is that you got to have structure, and you have to have organization, and that means people can't infiltrate you. Mm-hmm. But there's a structure and organization and a plan going on now. It's just that black folks have not put it together. Mm-hmm.
It's somebody else's agenda.
Yeah, and
we like to tag online.
Yeah. It's like our children, their education. Black women have always fought. Right now, you see all these women all over the country fight for their children's education. Black women need to fight for the education of our children. Mm-hmm. We've always known that education. Your mother told you to get your education. That's right. Boy, you do your homework. You got to get your education. But now, our children are following people who making them think you're nothing. The man got his foot on your neck. You got to do this. And while they're doing that, they're building up other people. And our energy is going toward that ungodly stuff. Because we always believed that God moved us. And most of our leaders was ministers. And I don't know what black folks got to this thing about some of the ministers might be responsible too. But that you can't trust your church, you can't do this.
Yes. There's a great distrust now.
Right.
With the church and the community.
Yeah. And why?
Yeah.
Why, Pastor? Yeah. You don't want to answer that.
Hey, let's talk about those. It's those backroom deals you're talking about. Right? The compromise. One thing that you taught me, that I find I use maybe 4 or 5 times a year, and you talked about it from King telling you always taught me, don't come to the table hungry. Right. See, when you come to the table starving, you eat anything.
Eat anything. That was Dr. King's words. Never negotiate hungry.
And so too many of our leadership, we're just going to deal with the distrust of the church probably started, because we come into the table hungry. And as you were talking about how the mayor got the ministers to the table.
Yeah, got them there, but they weren't hungry.
I thought of what I heard about in Chicago. You could correct me because you were here. It seemed like sort of the attempt that Mayor Daley tried to do when King came to town.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to get to that.
To ingratiate himself.
Well, he did. No, he had ministers now. This is the first time we had come to, it had been anywhere.
Okay.
That black ministers had a press conference with the politicians, told us to leave.
Wow.
I mean, they told us, we don't want you here. Daley put his people out there. But we had ministers like A.P. Jackson and Reverend Freeman, Lambert, have several ministers who stood with us. Arabian was a minister. We had a lot of ministers that stood, the young ones again,
the young ones,
that stood with us. So no, they came out now. Yeah. And but I remember Dr. King said that, I'm going to tell you something. I don't know what Dr. King of Bevel said. He said, I'm going to tell you something that this plantation in Chicago is worse than any plantation Mr. Charlie had in Mississippi. He said, in Mississippi, we go on a plantation, we can deal and talk with these folks. They got another kind of plantation. They got garbage can plantation. They got a sidewalk plantation. They got my brother working there plantation. We started naming all the stuff that Mr. Charlie had on black folks up here. But no, they met with us and they told us they had a press conference and they told us to leave. Yes. And remember, Clay Evans couldn't even get his church built for a long time because of that. But anyway, I'm going to go back to Montgomery and I'm going to come here. Yeah. I always like to tell people, when I talk to my friends in Alabama, and Montgomery especially, and I got a girlfriend named Doris, I forgot to tell her, look, who's really struggling. She's fighting now. She really fights now. That Montgomery is not giving his due. The liberation for black folks in our generation in time, going back to the 50s and 40s, started in Alabama. It started in Montgomery. The movement that was really major was in Montgomery, where people just stood. And I'm not talking about the Emmett Till time. That's a whole nother, that's where they killed him. I'm talking about the people massively mobilized and organized to fight this system. So from Montgomery to Birmingham, back to Montgomery to Selma. And I always call Montgomery the mothership. Yeah. Because when they won, I want to tell the sisters who are listening, Miss Robinson, nobody really paid so much attention to know, but I grew up with women who were strong, you know, who understood, and they worked and they cared for us, and they taught us who we were, and what we, and I always, when Jim Bevel and Diane went to SCLC after the Birmingham movement, and because Bevel's position was that they done bombed the church. And when you read the writing people write about the Selma movement, Pastor, it's wrong.
Okay.
It's totally incorrect. They got different pieces in there that's right, but it's not correct. You know, I just got through reading a book that was totally messed up, and I won't call his name. I'm going to be calling him. I had to go through his book. He sent me a book.
Okay.
So I wanted to look at this book, and I was so upset. I called Diane Nash last night, Diane Bevel. I said, Diane, she said, I saw it. And she said, don't call him tonight. Sleep on it. Call him next week. Because I have to deal with that, because the way he dealt with the movement, he put truth in it, sprinkle in there. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But it was not right. It was incorrect, even the way we weaved folks in there. So I will talk to him next week, Diane, if you're listening. but because you cannot talk about Selma without talking about Diane Nash and Reverend Bevel. When Diane Bevel then, but she went back to her maiden name.
Okay.
You know, they was part of that student sit-in and all that.
Wow.
That, you know, Diane and Bevel and John Lewis and C.T. Vivian, all of them. Jim Lawson, they was a student sit-in, but they let you tell a sit-in. They have you thinking like some white kids came down and they did the sit-in and not really tell you what they went through, you know, what happened with the sit-in. So I was just blessed to be able to work with them and be trained and taught by Diane and Jim Bevel. But when they came to Montgomery to get us, and they split, they didn't leave SCLC. Bevel got angry. Oh, shit, Bevel always. But anyway, Diane and Bevel had written up this, and in this book, they wrote the wrong thing that Diane and Bevel came with. I did say, grow, get rid of Wallace, and that wasn't true. Now, when a person reads this, they're going to think that was true.
Okay.
Because that's a Diane, she said, that's a lie. And I knew it was, because I knew how we got into Selma.
Okay.
You know, and how the reason Dr. King came to Selma, because people came and talked to him. Yeah, they've been talking, but that's not why we were in Selma. And SNCC was already there.
Okay.
SNCC, and they were doing their little stuff, but they were different from us. We believe that you break a law unjust to make a just law. But they was there trying to teach folks the Constitution and all of that stuff. You know, I was a field staff organizer for Dr. King, and I read this book, and none of the field staff people, they didn't even mention the role we played. Because to talk about it, you have to have structure. It was like some elitist group of people going in a room and coming out, but we had structure. We had field secretaries, and folks worked up under them. I worked on the Bevel. We was a direct action team.
Okay.
And we would tell. Dr.
So
King
you had
said,
different teams that.
Yeah, we worked under, and Jose had a group, you know, if you was a field secretary, you had a group of folks working, like Anderson was the ministers. He and CTM, they was doing minister stuff. Now, we had structure, SCLC had a lot of structure, that's why we were successful. So, but when Dr. King said, I'm going to Chicago and I'm going to tear it up, we go in front of him. And he just tear it up and let him walk in, and we go to the next place. We were trained and taught in nonviolence, but we was fearless. And we loved black people. We had a very understanding of nonviolence. And one thing people have to understand about nonviolence is that you don't get angry at the person, you get angry at the injustice.
Love it, yeah.
Because if you stay so upset at the person, there's no reconciliation and you can't come up with anything. So they got these young folks just mad. Because while they got off young people angry at everybody, you are no good. The white man think that you're nothing. You just, you know you this, white supremacy. No, you're not that. Don't let them white folks define you.
Right.
You know, please don't let them define you. So because now you can't come out of what we got to do.
Right.
Because time,
it's as you always explain to me, it's really biblically principled.
Right.
Our liberation, and that's why it disappoints me.
Yeah, it's very biblical too.
That black folks will say, or turn their back on their faith, where our freedom was gained towards our faith. All that you just talked about as far as not blaming the person, Ephesians tells us this. We struggle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, evil spirits in high places. And when you understand, that's who you're fighting.
Right.
And not the person that may be the expression of that.
Right.
That allows that
you fight that injustice they're doing. See,
Right.
Dr. King was a very spiritual man. Dr. King wasn't playing. These folks playing spirituality.
Right.
Dr. King was and he loved black people. He loved everything you hear. He ended up talking about the Negro people, black people, and not African American. He said Afro-American. There's a difference between Afro-American and African American.
Now break that down. What's
We'll
the
talk
difference?
about that later.
We're going to talk about it later.
If you go back, you hear Dr. King say Afro-American.
Yes,
You heard him.
Yep.
You heard Malcolm X say Afro-American.
Not African. You're right.
Yeah, because, anybody can be an African-American. A white man come to America and be an African-American. He's born in Africa.
Gotcha.
That's me saying that, not Dr. King, but I'm telling you.
All right, I get. That's like what Paul says. When Paul says, "It's me, not the Lord." Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But when Dr. King got the Nobel Peace Prize, he didn't keep that. He split that money up among all of the civil rights organizations because he thought it belonged to everybody.
Wow.
And when they assassinated him, I tell folks, no, he wasn't killed, he wasn't murdered, he was assassinated, which is a very powerful word that we must use and tell our children, because you assassinate someone because you're frightened of them, you're scared of their power.
Got it. Yeah.
So there's a difference when you assassinate it. And that's why I never used when they assassinated him, because it was really frightening. But Dr. King already knew. Dr. King was very spiritual too. And one thing we did is we prayed before we left. We prayed in the middle, prayed at the end. And we believed in our God. It's like we knew God would deliver us like he did Moses. That was our Red Sea. We knew all of that stuff. We believed it so strongly. Yeah. And sometimes we would frighten them. They would get scared. We get to pray and the white folks get nervous.
I'm sure. Right. Yeah. You're human. You're human, right?
Yeah, they get kind of nervous. But anyway, so Bevel came to, Bevel and Diane went to Dr. King. Almost every movement Dr. King had, because even Bevel came, he left SNCC and came and joined Dr. King to make sure the Birmingham movement went. And that's why they won and got, because when Bevel got there, Bevel the one put the children in the street. Bevel's one of the founding members of SNCC, he and Diane and all of them. But because of what was going on with Dr. King, he tried to get the rest of them to come and join to make sure this movement happened.
Yeah.
They didn't come, but Diane went, several of them went and joined. C.T. Vivian, who was a member of SNCC, quite a few of them went to join Dr. King. And Bevel turned that thing around. So when the church was bombed, he was really upset. Because I think I don't know whether he was in the city or not. I got to ask Diane. But I got to ask Diane about that. But he said, in order for us to change this, we're going to have to get our people the right to vote. We got to vote them out. We got to get the power of the vote so that we can get people in office who's going to represent our people. So Diane and Bevel, they laid out Bevel showed me that once, and I don't know whether Diane still have that or not, but we talk about it often. We talked about it last night. I said, so y'all presented GROW, huh? And she started laughing because she said, but anyway, they presented the program to Dr. King. Dr. King always listened to Bevel, and a lot of the other field secretaries and the executive board didn't particularly care about it. And as Diane and Bevel told me, that when they presented that, a lot of the executive, because we had structure, no, we just got this and it and got a little bit of some
Can you break down that?
They had gotten public accommodation
from top to bottom, so our viewers can hear what this structure was like.
Well, you got the executive board,
Executive board.
You got Dr. King and all them folks on the executive shuttle with them. Then you got your field secretaries.
Okay.
And you got the people under your field secretary. Okay. But you also had your office staff.
Okay.
Everything was organized. We was very coordinated. We kind of knew what to do. We even knew what to do if Dr. King got assassinated.
Wow.
The person who called Mrs. King wasn't supposed to call Mrs. King. That was Raph's job.
Got it.
To call. We even knew what to do if somebody else just got hurt, how to do and how to move.
Now, as she's talking, I'm going to look at the camera now. Do you all see that when she's talking about organizing, she's not talking about Instagram and text, meet me on 87th Street. It's a conscious way to resist and fight evil and injustice, and that's what we kind of miss. Because now what we got is, you know, when the riots broke out that Sunday, after I got through preaching, I got called the George Floyd instance happened on the Sunday. I got calls from all of our members, Pastor, hurry up and get home. Hurry up and get home, because it's going to start on 55th. And literally, when I got on 55th all the way out to South Holland, I could see the police coming at each stop. And I happened to have been on the expressway, because the way we organized in that sense was, hey, y'all, let's just come on out. But and what you all did was something much different.
Right, well, you know, we was on 47 and King Drive. You see the four corners,
we didn't protect the cultural center.
We didn't go home. We went to the corner. My daughter, Jim Lee, all of us. We went to the corner. Bimiji, Jim Lee, all my children and people that's associated with Harold Washington, because those four corners belongs to black folks. And we was, you know, we didn't go home. But that's that courage thing. That you know, if you truly believe in God, and you have no fear. I'm not saying you don't be concerned. I don't say be crazy.
Absolutely.
I don't know how you cannot have courage. Because you're lying to say, my God lead me, He gonna protect me. You just talking junk. Because if it's right, it's gonna be all right. But if it's wrong, you better be scared. But if it's right, and you're doing the right thing, one thing Dr. King said was one of the most terrible thing in the world is for a person to do the right thing for the wrong reason.
Yes, I love that quote,
He said it was very dangerous. And I didn't understand it when I was young, but as I got older, I understood. If you said the right thing right now, Pastor, and start leading folks for your wrong reason, then whatever you're going to get, you get. Right. The people get disgusted. They go in expecting something. They don't get it. They get disgusted. They go in and don't come out no more. And we've had a lot of people who've led our people for the right thing for the wrong reason, and now people are just, I'm not going to do that. You know, they just get tired.
Right, it didn't work out. Why
right,
do it?
right. So, you know, but anyway, so when Bevel came to Montgomery, after he presented it, and Dr. King said, okay, according to Diane and Bevel, he was really excited about it because he believed in Bevel. Bevel was smart and brilliant. So when he got to the executive, they said, no, they had already got a little victory. You know, they wanted to skate a little bit.
Right.
Because now you got the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I jumped on the MIA to the Southern Christian. And remember now, it was a Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Not no who, boo, 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 none of that.
Right.
It was Southern Christian.
Yeah.
And remember, for people keep forgetting, that was young men and women leading that march. I'm not talking, we was in there with them as young folks and teenagers, but they weren't no old folks. My pastor was probably the youngest one in the MIA. Abernathy was the oldest, and he was 28.
Wow. The oldest was 28?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you know, young, you know what they say, you know. that.
And how did the elders support you all through that? How did they support you?
Well, several things. If they went, like I said, my grandma took me to the Whole Street Baptist Church. They went to the meetings, they prayed. Some of them marched, and if they didn't, they cooked the food. They brought the so-and-so, they did that. They be in prayer meetings. They get... the men to go fishing and get some fish, and the women cook the fish and bring it to them. They put their little money together, and some of them even march. But if you ever notice our marches, you didn't see no raggedy, dirty black people.
No.
We used to have too much pride to be dirty.
Pride, yeah.
You know, we had so much pride. It was like, you might take me to jail, but they might be holy, but the show is clean. You know, that kind of
Right. Might be holy, but the show is clean. See, that's the first time I ever heard you tell me that.
Yeah, holy. So that was really a thing about, that's part of our pride too, about cleanliness. And, you know, it was like my mama said, if you got a box, clean it, sweep it. We swept the dirt. We took a broom and mopped the floor. You know, we mopped that little floor, clean it, you know. So we had another kind of attitude because we believed that cleanliness was next to godliness.
And it goes back to that story too, right? You all determined how you were going to look. And I think what we're faced with now is we've allowed society to tell us this is how a black man should look. But you know, Pastor, look at Joe Louis, how he dressed. Look at all the folks who was in sports,
football, basketball, whatever they was in, leadership, how they dressed.
Right.
Look at Mahalia, all the people who sing. There was a code. As one man always called on my show about the code of conduct. But we really did have a code of conduct. And we still have it. We have the template. We don't have to go reinvent nothing.
Gotcha.
We have the template. We need to look at it and see what we need to do. We might want to improve or do something because it's different times. But we have to, we have the template.
Got the lesson plan.
Yeah. You know, we still have the Masons.
Yeah.
You know, the Masons was very strong with us.
Okay.
You know, that's why Mason Temple and all, that's where the bus boycott ended and they met and stuff. Masons, the Eastern Stars, the ministers, you know, the sororities wasn't just for dancing and hoop-to-hoop-to-doop. You know, right now them sororities don't do what they're supposed to do. Nobody's doing what they're supposed to do. And that's why we're in trouble. And in order to get out of this trouble, we got to call this community to order. And calling them to order is not talking about doing is calling them to order in terms of why was you founded? What is your foundation that you're standing on? Can we build off of that? But what happened was they got so comfortable and they got stuff and they moved on. Yeah, they give their little sorority, their little churches that, but not for the overall community. They don't care about baby kids. My mom, you take baby kid and take them to Sunday school.
Yeah, and when you think about that, we talk about organizations without being very specific because there were several. And it doesn't really matter where you fell politically, if you were with Kamala or not.
No.
But it was my understanding that there were some historical groups in our community that had said, that wanted her to be vice president, that actually said, well, we won't openly support because we don't want to lose our not-for-profit status.
Well,
that's a courage thing for me.
Right, but the sad thing about them selecting Kamala had nothing to do with principle or morality or anything had to do with color.
Right.
And that's when you could do a content of character. I don't know if it was Kamala or anybody. Some folks wanted because they was in the sorority. Some folks wanted this. Kamala grew up in Canada.
Character.
You know, she went to Coward because there was a place for a black person, another black American. I'm not saying whether she should or shouldn't. I'm just saying.
Right. The reason, though.
Right. Black folks' reasons are so messed up now. That's why we messed up, even in terms of elected officials. We get them. We happy. Look, we got this black man. He can step on us all the time, be abused by these people. Don't do nothing because they black. I don't care if you black, white, green, or purple. Get your foot off my neck, you gone.
That's right.
And if people have more respect for you, and then when you put folks in office, they respect that they represent you, not that so-called power. But black folks is really, we have got to move from just because it's black.
Yeah.
You know, Bevel used to say sometimes you follow black devil and miss a white angel.
Yeah.
And you say, I'm not going to follow you, angel, but you come on, be on my shoulder. Come on, you come. But, you can't deal with, when they talk about doctrine content of character, I think black folks get it mixed up. Content of character go both ways, but both the white and the black. You say, I want you to judge my children off the content of their character. Then you got to judge too off the content of somebody's character.
Yeah, and as we always talk, it's the first time it's resonated to me. That content of character thing is a request for humanity.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's a request for humanity. Yeah, content of character is a request for humanity. But we get, and if you're a Christian, you can't be like that. That's why we're suffering too. And I don't know whether folks understand the history of Christianity or the history of the leadership. They really are playing games. It's like church has become a social club, to get up out the house and go play Christian. And your Christian the person that got more of God in it might be in, like you say, on that corner of 47th Street. Because when Bevel came to Montgomery, I have to go back to, when Bevel went to Dr. King and Dr. King agreed, and they had just got a little slight victory in Birmingham, okay, we're going to do this. And they wasn't ready, because they was already mad because Bevel put all those children in the street. They didn't agree with that at first, but once it worked, you hear everybody telling their story now, Now,
how did he, when you say put the children in the street, how did he do that?
Well, Bevel this is Bevel theory.
Okay.
Bevel theory was, you put the children in the church, the parents got to come get them out of jail. A white man going to make the parents mad, we got us a movement.
Okay, wow.
Fill the jail. And the children, not only that, the children didn't have to worry about light bill, gas bill, and nothing else. And it's in their free, they understand freedom. So he always came to the youth. So the youth, we were the warriors. And I remember when Bevel got to Montgomery, Because he said, okay. And Diane was telling me, she always tell me, she told me again last night, that they was just look at SCLC didn't cut her salary off and Bevel's salary. Now, when we say salary, it's a joke. Because when I was in the movement, I got $10 every 2 weeks for personables. That's all.
Wow.
You know, and the secretaries got a little bit more because they had families.
Okay.
But all of our needs was taken care of. Wherever we went, people put us up. We had a whole group of doctors that people don't talk about. Dr. Mulroney, I spoke at his funeral a couple of years ago. Dr. Rudolph Mulroney, Dr. Jones, a bunch of these doctors in Chicago that took care of Dr. King's staff. Wherever we went, we had people took care of us.
Wow.
So we really didn't need nothing, really.
Yeah. He'll supply all your needs according to his riches and glory.
Right. We got $10 in the South, $20 in the North. Take care of our personables.
Wow.
That's all. And the field secretaries got a little bit more. So that's what Diane meant when she said they was lucky they didn't take the salary. But they came, and Bevel came on to Montgomery, and I remember we were all sitting out there and standing out there and messing around, and Bevel said, hey, what y'all doing? What you want? We looking at this old funny-looking man with these overalls on. He said, you know your mama can't pee in the weed, don't you?
What?
What you mean?
What does that mean?
He said, if you pee in the weed, she might get lynched. She got to select the weed, she go pee. That's what Bevel said to us.
Oh, Lord.
Well, we understood it. It resonated. And it was interesting. As I was telling Reverend Fields today, the reason we accepted it and went to the media access to come to, because all of us that came out of churches that had ministers who, as we was growing up as kids, was teaching liberation to us. Yeah. So that's why we heard it.
You heard it. It was part of it.
Right.
Yeah.
I told him, I said, because I heard you. He taught liberation and freedom and who we were. So I grew up, even when I went to Pensacola, I passed down there. We grew up teaching us. We didn't just go to Sunday school, somebody, well, Jesus saved and this and that, and he just can and do this dance and all that. They taught us liberation. And
that's why I think we got to be careful today about shutting our youth out of the main worship experience. Right. We ought to have an experience where they can express themselves.
Yeah, they didn't separate us. We sit up in there.
I didn't grow up separated either. Our church was so small, I couldn't.
Now, where they come from with that separating the children?
I think we somehow got very sophisticated along the way. I think there is a need maybe for your little ones, but what we're trying to do here...
For your 2 and 3 little babies,
Yeah, 4, 5. But I think when your kids start getting 10, 11, 12, they need to get a touch of, especially if they're under good leadership, like you did, like I had with my old man and A.P. Jackson and all that. Yeah. I think we got to be careful about that, segregating them, because it stunts their growth. Yeah. And
you need to start earlier than 10.
Yeah. At least bringing them up.
Now, you want to take the ones who can't be still on stuff.
I hear you.
I heard all that. Even if I go to sleep, I heard that stuff. And I heard
it sticks with you.
Yeah, and I heard the praying and understood the power of God. And so I was telling Reverend Fields today, I'm all right. Okay. I was telling him that. I said, I explained to him, because he wasn't there, he gone on, moved on away, how Bevel got us. And I said, that's because of, I can blame you for all that stuff you taught us in church. And then he said, and I said, not only me, like Mildred, not Mildred went out church, but when you take Leon and all the other folks, they went to Holt Street Church, they went to AM Church, they went to churches where ministers was preaching liberation. We grew up in the Montgomery Bus Boycott. You know, we was part of that Montgomery Bus Boycott. That stuck with us. Yeah. So it was easy, and that's what he told me about the destiny and the courage. He said God was had us in that destiny, getting us ready for this. He said, not only did God get you ready for that, he got you ready for Selma, got you ready for Chicago. Destiny, yeah. And he said, you still have the courage. Yeah. And he said, and so I said, I thought about it. But all of us who joined and became part of SCLC staff, we all came from churches. We weren't in the same church. But we came, and I also went to Booker T. Washington High School, and some was at Carver, but I came from a different mindset. So it was easy. We understood everything Bevel was talking about. Yeah. And that's how and so the truth be told, when he came and he got us, so we began to go to jail. I mean, it was 10, I went to jail so much in Montgomery. Wow. We was fighting up there. And because Bevel came and got us, we was fighting and we was doing our stuff and having demonstrations and all of that stuff. In the meantime, while we're having demonstrations, Sneak is still in Selma, trying to teach folks the Constitution, all that other stuff. Well, Sheriff Clark got nervous. Well, before he gave his proclamation, we were at the MIA office because somehow folks think it's bad to meet and disagree and fight and struggle and come up with the best idea.
Yeah.
Dare to struggle, dare to win.
Right.
You know, one thing about our organization, and one thing I got out of the book the person wrote, and he's absolutely right. He said, Dr. King loved everybody being there fighting to give different opinions. And then when he get through, then he'll come up with what he's going to do. Because you get different ideas. And we was taught to fight it out. Don't sit there and just take it. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's how you get better ideas. So we did that. So we was at the MIA office with Bevel and James Orange and Marcette and Diane, a bunch of folks, and the newly staffed that we became SCLC field staff. And we were at the MIA office. We were trying to figure out what we were going to do because a bunch of us had just got out of jail, and how we was going to really kick this thing off to make sure we get the voter registration going. So Diane Bevel is really responsible for how we lay. She said, and I always tell her this, I tell this joke. Diane is mulatto, so she was in the bathroom, and as kids, we were making fun of her. We call her Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, because when she came out the bathroom, she had a little cold and she rubbed her nose. Her nose was real red. We were just laughing. And I said, Diane, we made so much fun at you. So she said, I got it. Bevel said, what? So he turned the page over and he began. She said, let's present WAL as a declaration of freedom. And then we began to lay out how we would do it to kick off this voter registration and present it to him. In the meantime, Sheriff Clark got a little nervous because of all the activity that was going on in Montgomery. And you got SNCC in Selma. So he gave a decree that no more than 3 Negro coloreds can be on the street after dark. And Bevel said, we got it. You know what Sheriff Clark just did? We're going to put a whole lot of colors on that street. So that's how we ended up in Selma. And that's how SCLC ended up in Selma. It wasn't from all this other stuff that, sure, people that talked to Dr. King about coming help with the voter registration and all that.
Right.
And I was among the first group on SCLC staff that was sent into Selma.
Okay.
And I was sent there by James Bevel.
Wow.
You know, and a lot of us, it's just like Lula. Some of us are dead now, like Leon is gone, and I was talking like Lula, who was there when she got the call Dr. King got assassinated, she was on guard. Lula ended up going to be up under Jose. A bunch of them that started with Bevel ended up going under Jose. And when most folks forget about Jose was a chemist when he came and joined the movement. So you had people that was committed.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a chemist for the government. He came and joined the movement. He dropped that and came and joined the movement. Gave up everything to follow him.
Wow. There you go.
So Lula ended up being up on the Jose.
Wow.
So that's kind of how we ended up there. But I read it also in this book, and I'm very upset. I'm gonna call. But they wasn't there, so they can't tell what happened. And C.T. Vivian knows, but he's gone now too. Yeah. But I was looking. They was there later, but they wasn't there when they said Jimmy Lee Jackson stood up for his mother because the sheriff was gonna hit him with a billy club, because they didn't know the whole story about. And I had went home because James Orange was in jail. And Lula and all of them, some of the staff was going to go to the jail and pray that night to make sure they don't bother. We do that when folks was in jail. Yeah. We was in Perry County. He was in Perry County jail. I went home. I said, I'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to go home. Let my dad have to calm her down. Let me go home.
Right.
I had no idea all the hell was going to break loose that night, because I wouldn't have gone. I'd have been right up in the middle of it.
Right.
But, so they cut off all the lights, all the street lights. They came in and started beating up everybody.
Wow.
CT told me he was headed back to Dallas County from Perry County, and the lights were cut off there too. And somebody said they beating up those people, the staff back there. He tried to go back through and get back around, couldn't get through. And Jim Lee Jackson. So they started scattering, going to the restaurant and stuff, black restaurant and stuff. And Jim Lee Jackson took a bullet for his mama. He took a bullet because he wasn't gonna have his mother was there trying to see about her father.
Okay.
Her father was one of our big supporters, and trying to get help to get him to the hospital, and they was gonna hurt her, and he stood in front of his mother, and they shot him. all that wasn't in the book. That's very important. This young man did that. That's very important.
Very important, yeah.
But they don't know that. That's why they just said Jimmy Lee Jackson got shot and we marched to the, you know, I'm saying it's like little pieces of the truth.
Right.
So it was really a mess. And we had a mass meeting. And we wasn't feeling it.
Okay.
The young folks.
Yeah.
We wasn't feeling it. We weren't feeling it. I'm telling you, we were upset.
Yeah.
Bevel preached it out of us. And Bevel, the way he got us not to go do something we was thinking about doing was because he said, we're going to take this body. He came with action, and we're going to carry it to Montgomery and sit the coffin on Wallace's step.
Wow. Okay.
So but then they came to the point that they decided not to do that. They were buried, and then we'll do the march. We'll begin the march. So that's what happened. Okay. That's how we decided, that's how we started moving toward Montgomery, moving from the courthouse to the bridge to go to Montgomery.
Wow.
But when you read the book, you won't hear it like that. This book said, yeah, we was burying Jimmy Lee and taking him to the grave, and Bevel said, and we was talking. They did give Bevel the credit about we need to go to Montgomery, but it was told differently.
Yeah.
And the reason the stories have to be told, and there's only a few of us left, is because the young people need to understand that.
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
Yeah, you know, so it was really something. And he didn't die right then. They took him to Selma where he died a few days later. They came and served him while he was in the bed.
And see, why this is so powerful, because I've heard from people in my generation and younger, some people that want to criticize the movement or criticize Dr. King with no perspective. Mm-hmm. The first thing I always hear them say is, oh, I want to be, no, they were weak. They didn't fight back. They didn't do this. But what you guys did was even more courageous than walking in there with Uzis.
Right.
It took more trust in God.
Right.
It was intelligent, first
mm-hmm,
of all,
mm-hmm,
right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think the story you're sharing is so powerful,
mm-hmm,
because the gravity of what the risk of life that you all had, I think gets missed.
Yes.
I really do think. They'll show Edmund Pettus Bridge once
mm-hmm.
Black History Month, but the multiple times you all were in danger.
Oh yeah, we had people get beat up, folks we had a lot of stuff that happened. Wow. But the thing of it is that I remember Bevel and Dr. King were telling us that we don't do no violence. But saying, hey, put that down. We don't do this. You go with somebody else. He said, you gonna shoot a gun? It's like shooting an elephant with a BB gun, and you're gonna make everybody, you know. It was like when during the Jane Meredith, when they went down there, when they was trying to deal with something. We gonna shoot. They said, why you gonna do that? If you wanna, like Stokely jumped all over when he was down there because he wanted to be known. I remember Stokely used to sing, I had a dream, my name was M.L. King. I knew Stokely very well.
Really?
See, he took over SNCC, and he wanted to be Dr. King so bad. But when they were in Mississippi doing the Meredith thing, he went to jump at one of the officers, and Dr. King pulled him back. He said, man, you don't have no right to, no, you don't have no right, because if you by yourself, you can go fight him, but you can't put all these folks' life at risk.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't really nothing but a game anyway.
Yeah.
A game to show some power, and then the press, and he's talking about black power, and people start talking that stuff. I remember Samson told him, say, now he dead, what y'all gonna do about it? Go on with your power, show us what you're gonna do. Mm-hmm. So what have they done? Right. And I don't have, Kwame said, Toure told Conrad, said, how's Dorothy right? And Conrad said, he already said, tell her, I said, how? Yeah. He married Mary Keefe and went on to Salisbury. Folks just went on. See, we had longevity. We had a thing. We had a plan. We wasn't trying to play. And let me tell you something. We was in Philadelphia. We was doing a northern tour with Dr. King. And we had a way we did Dr. King. You could never, if those field staff, you could never get a straight shot at him. We were singing freedom songs, but we had a way kind of protecting them too.
Okay.
I'm doing your field staff now. I'm doing Bevel staff. And even Jose's staff when they was there. Because Big Lester and JT, which is Jose's staff, Big Lester is dead, but JT is still living. So they had, we was in Philadelphia, and this man jumped, we was doing a northern tour to decide our city.
Yeah.
And this man jumped up at Dr. King with a machete, a big old knife. And Lester and James Orange were big. they grabbed that sucker, and we started beating him up. They said, I thought y'all was nonviolent. He said, yeah, take this. Boom. We wasn't no punks. Now, I don't want you to think
I know y'all
punks.
was. And see, they won't show that on NBC.
NBC didn't see it.
They just want to show everybody getting hit upside the head with a rock.
We wouldn't let NBC see that. They couldn't let Dr. King be embarrassed with Dr. King like that. I tell anybody, I understand the nonviolent movement, and I know what is the principle of, but if you meet me, I ain't going to take no, and like you said, individually you make your decision, but you have no right to put that on the hold.
Yeah, put everybody in.
And that's what's happening now. They got folks putting this stuff on the hold in our community right now, scared to come out. Yeah. The community tore up. The education messed up. The whole, you let a few Europeans tell you what to do because you got a little money, you get out and preach that stuff. That social justice mess is the worst thing in the world. Yeah. We talked about equity. Then we talk about equity, we talk about equality.
Equality, yeah.
Because they don't have no equity. Yeah. What kind of equity are you trying to get?
Yeah.
Our equality was getting equity.
Yeah.
As we built Breadbasket. Breadbasket was built from Bennett, what's his name? Not Bennett, I think of his name in a minute, who started the Breadbasket in Georgia. It was started in Georgia.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Fred Bennett, of the ministers, and it was ministers who was dealing with the bread companies down there, and they put bread on people's table. And that was, talking about equity, that was equality to get folks to work.
Get folks to work.
I mean, we had plans, and right now I don't see no major plans for black people. And the worst thing in the world is that the education system is so messed up. It's messed up. And our children are functioning illiterate. Yeah. And those who done made it out is not seeing it and not doing it. They're not seeing about it. Our children are functioning illiterate. They are not teaching them how to read, write, compute, math. They don't want you to talk about biology because you got to talk about X, Y, and XX, so you don't get biology because they teach them about sex and everything but that.
Right.
Sex and hate. Nothing to help them. That's not going to help them survive. They won't become doctors.
Right.
They won't become the best that they can be.
Yeah.
They take the music out of the schools, can't become artists.
Yeah.
They don't go to church to sing, to get the soul music.
Yeah.
I tell my children, they used to come to the church to spot people out to get music.
Yeah.
But no, we had organization, but I wanted to make it very important that our ministers believed. They believed in God. When you think about Reverend Reese and Selma, everywhere we went, we had ministers. Now, we ended up, our office was on the west side at Warren Avenue Congregational Church. I'm going to take you to one day. But it's another church, something else. It was a white minister, but it was a Congregational Church. They done turned into some other kind of church. Now, they still got the blue room there.
Okay.
They done kind of cut it off. I took my kids by that for them to see it, but the walls on the church looked the same and all that. But we ended up over there because we really didn't no minister give us their office. No black ministers let us have an office in their church.
Really?
And we always had an office in the church.
Wow.
Wherever we went. So we ended up at Warren Avenue, Bill Briggs, Congregational, because Andy and all of them got MCTM, so we ended up our office there.
Okay.
That's why our office was there.
Okay.
Even though we came and worked with CCO, but our office was there. But we did have ministers who stood up and fought for us, like A.P. Jackson and all of them. But certainly, Liberty members probably had a fit if they put our office in this church.
Yeah. And let's touch on that. I know it's 8 o'clock, guys, but like last week, we're gonna go in overtime.
God.
We're gonna go in overtime for 12 more minutes.
I forgot. I wasn't even looking at the clock.
But I needed to mention that, and I wrote this note when she first started. It's important to know that Sister Tilman's relationship, though, goes back to Liberty way before I was even born.
That's right.
And it goes to A.P. Jackson and his relationship with Dr. Martin Luther King and standing up here in Chicago. And so Sister Tilman, long before I got here, long before I was born, had a relationship with this place.
That's right.
She just ended up coming on back where the Lord was going to have her sometime later. So I want to make that point about A.P. Jackson.
I loved A.P. Jackson. And you had A.P. Jackson, Reverend Freeman at Friendship.
Friendship, yeah.
We know we had, when we would march over there in Marquette and Gage Park, That's what our staging area was.
Okay.
And when people would get hurt, we had our doctors and stuff there. So Reverend Freeman gave a lot to the movement. And you had Lambert's Credit and Thurston. So we had a few. I'm scared to name too many of them because I might not remember all of them, but not enough.
Yeah.
Because they was on Daly's plantation.
Yeah.
But we had some, and Joe Jackson, I think that's his name.
Yeah,
Olivet.
Yeah.
He's one of the ones leading the ministers for us to go back. And in fact, that Liberty members might not realize the reason we have progressive Baptists is because of people like A.P. Jackson.
Yes.
And remember, those are the young ministers.
Yeah.
They fought the older ministers like that because they didn't want to support Dr. King.
Yeah.
And they broke away, and they came up with the progressive
National Baptist Convention.
Right, and that's most folks, or younger folks might not know why we have it.
Yeah.
And it's because them young bucks, boy, they fought back.
Thanks for sharing that, and you're right, because Olivet was like the first mega church, right?
Yeah.
And they were National Baptist Convention, and the King split came out of that. And I'm gonna give you the last few minutes, but one thing that's always ironic that we as PNBC churches need to digest. We were born out of progression, so we need to stay progressive, right?
Right.
And not morph into the entity that we separated from 50 years ago.
Because you go down there, it got weeds growing up.
So I mean,
I hate to say that. And Liberty is thriving. And you remember when Daly named King Drive after Dr. King, he moved his church off of King Drive and put it on 31st Street. Yeah.
He changed the entrance.
It was those. Didn't they have a fight at the convention and somebody
pulled
out guns?
There was a fight for it.
Did somebody have a heart attack? It was a big old fight at the convention.
There was a heritage of black preachers now with them guns.
Yeah, well, you know, right here at Liberty. Right here at Liberty.
Right.
When there was when Dr. King, the ministers here who supported Dr. King, the ones then, them folks started pulling out guns down here at Liberty. AP might have pulled out one himself.
AP was a feisty. This church has a reputation of feisty little guys.
Yeah, he was something else, but he was a person who had courage.
Yeah.
He had courage.
Yeah.
You know, and he was a friend of Dr. King. That's why I named that street after him out there. But he was a friend of Dr. King and of the movement.
Yeah.
And he had principles.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes you can sit up on a leader and don't understand where they're coming from.
That's true.
And a lot of folks might have said I didn't even understand. And I'm not sure whether or not the members who was here with him is really telling folks how we got to be progressive Baptists.
Yeah.
That history is not told.
Yeah.
Because folks don't want to talk about it.
And
that's as bad as folks talk about enslavement.
Yeah, and he kind of did this as a separate. It was a separate kind of movement. The church was doing this thing, part of PNBC, and that synergy. We never really grasped the totality of. But that's wonderful that you shared that, because that's how we came out of it.
Right.
And that's why
AP was tough. Now he wasn't. When it came to Dr. King, he didn't play about that.
Yeah.
And you know, he was like those ministers that I grew up with in Montgomery.
Okay. All right.
We had a few here that was fighting,
Yeah.
and he stood with us. You know, he didn't go down there and stand up. Daily called us just like, you know, they done went back to people calling them, and they said what the people tell them. That's what's so sad. Because we came in, that's a whole nother, we'll do it another time. We came in, blacks couldn't even move west of Racine. They couldn't move north. They were stuck in a ghetto. You know, they couldn't move. And the moment we fought for open housing, they talk about us, but they ran. But it was all right for them to run. I think that you have a right as a black American to live anywhere you want to be, enjoy the American dream.
Amen.
But you have a responsibility to maintain and rebuild communities. You don't have a right to run away from a community.
Absolutely.
And that's what other people do.
Yeah. Maintain the community. All right. Well, you got some closing thoughts for us?
Well, not really. I've enjoyed talking to you because we talk all the time.
Always. Yeah.
I just think that it's not about us. It's about the young people. And what I've seen is that most of the older people think it's about them. They still working about them. They looking around, they see the children can't read. You know, we got teachers sitting up in these churches, they know how to teach. Start a freedom school.
Yeah.
You know, begin to look and see how we can, the only way we got to save our children is through education. And we need to think about some vocational training. We need a lot of stuff we can do but we got to put our mind to, we got to trust God. Because God will guide you, but you got to be right, you know. And I just think that if it's not about the children, it's not about anything. And you know, I believe in education, and I believe it's for the children, it's for the youth. You know, hey, black child, you know, that whole poem, do you know who I am, little black child? But folks have gotten, they don't even want the children to come to the church, Pastor. Shut up, get on out of here. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And that really goes to what you said earlier that touched my heart, because I think that I may be amongst the last generation of our people to have experienced this. You're absolutely right about when you say you grow up in the church, you have so many people that develop you.
Right.
You know, my father was the pastor of the church, but there were some mothers on that second row that developed me, gave me silver dollars, said they was gonna pray for me, and they supported me. And see, I think we missing out. The church is lost its ability to support the youth. And see, I could get up on Sunday. I was a little preacher, you know, a little preacher boy, 6 years old, stand up there.
They saw you was gonna preach then, didn't they? They encouraged you, didn't they?
Yeah, but the beauty of it is, I could make a mistake. It was an environment I could make a mistake.
No, you can't. In church, you don't make a mistake.
Nobody gonna roll their eyes.
They clap. Yeah, go
on,
say it.
Go on. Now, you know, and so we lost that support.
Right.
And not, I tell our youth minister, Reverend Damon Smith, when I first got here to work with the youth church.
Well, they got to get away from the social justice and get into equality.
And then I let them know too that I didn't want the children's church to mirror what was upstairs. You know, it's because we had this mentality of.
But you also don't want to be an extension of these folks, what they're telling us to do, neither.
Right.
They already got our schools.
Right.
We cannot be, the church cannot be an extension of how they're destroying our children in school.
So we want to be a mechanism, and he started to do this where we support.
Right.
And so that's why you're sitting here. That's why God has allowed me to sit here and talk to you today, because the church supported. Yeah, I learned how to put on a shirt and tie and do all that.
Right.
But underneath that, when the tie come off, there's something inside of me that can't be taken.
Right. But how many young boys know how to put on a shirt and tie some shoes? Look how good you look. You look fine. Look at you. Look at my preacher. How many? You know, when they need to come and see these men on Sunday, how they be walking and what they be doing. How many?
Right.
You know, how many? What do they see?
We got to support them. So when they come in,
and
they don't have their shirt and tie on, when we come to them and support them, and they say, because I've had young men say to me, Rev, I sure want a suit like that.
You see what I'm talking about?
But it'd take them a couple of months to get there.
Right.
And because I'm supporting them.
Right.
You know, I wanted to be like Dr. King because I'm watching. I want to support. I want to be like A.P. Jackson. And, you know, because they supported me.
Yeah. Well, I think this church's mission in the black community got to go back.
Yeah, I'm agree.
Take me all the way, not that we got to do everything that was back, but we got to go back to our mission.
That's right. Here, right. Our consciousness, we got to go back to.
Right. We got to go back to our mission and understand whatever, like you always say, what brought us over. From the enslavement, how we made it, and what we believed in. And we didn't need psychiatrists. Because we said, Jesus is my psychiatrist.
That's right.
Have a little talk with Jesus.
That's right.
You know,
tell them all
we
about
didn't worry. You know, our children weren't worried. You got all these young suicide because they don't know to talk to God.
Yeah.
You know, if they can't, and their friends and all, they don't know that God is all. That God is real. They think it's some kind of, you know, you just saying that because you're the pastor and you the this. But they have to, once they understand the power of God and the power of what, see, I understood it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was in my soul.
Yeah.
I had no choice but for it to be in my soul.
Absolutely.
You know, and we got to put it back in to our children's soul. We got to put music back in there. They got to sing church music. They got to sing other music. We had so many artists when I was growing up. They don't even have many black artists now, unless they doing other stuff.
It's gotta be in your soul. Well, thank you, Sister Tilman.
Well, I would thank you, my pastor, for having
wonderful.
For those who watch, I want them to know this is my pastor.
Right on. I am her pastor.
I love him. Thank you so much.
Everybody in Chicago knows it.
Thank you.
What I want to leave you guys with tonight is what Sister Tilman was talking about. We got about a few seconds when she talked about the support and the why. I was going through something at Morehouse and I was all alone. It wasn't academic. I was actually sick. I got sick at school. I ate something. It really almost felt like it was taking me out. When you're young, you don't think to go to the doctor. So I'm in my room sweating, very sick, high fever, don't want to call home. But when we talk about that support, what you hear will come back to you. Almost crying, now in the bathroom, I just sang these words. Father, I stretch my hand to thee. No other help I know, if thou withdraw thy hand from me, oh, where the shall I go? Because they supported me, I remembered the hymn, not because they browbeat me. Let us bow our heads for a word of prayer. Dear God, we thank you for this conversation. We thank you for what has occurred tonight, God. We believe that all of us that listen tonight are better. We believe that our people are better for this conversation. And now, God, may this conversation morph into action. May we embrace the call that you have for Liberty Baptist Church of Chicago. Not trying to replicate the call of others, but God, whatever you're calling us to do, as the prophet Isaiah, we say, here we are, send us. Bless us, God, until we shall meet again. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You all have a good evening. God bless you. I won't see you on Sunday, but I hope you see me.